So I want to talk a little bit about Kell Brook versus Gennady Golovkin. It's a big fight coming up this weekend. I'm real excited about it, but most people just can't stop talking about the weight and how it's a David versus Goliath and fucking welterweight versus middleweight, cherry pick, whatever you want to. You guys have all heard it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and completely disagree right now. Not that what people are saying isn't possible, but to me, I think it's being blown way out of proportion. And from what I've seen, all signs point to Kell Brook is probably going to be the best Kell Brook that we've seen in a long time, if not ever. Um, the main issue that I've heard, and this is basically from, there's a lot of people that just don't know that boxers even cut weight and think that Kell Brook has been coming into the ring at 146 and a half or 147 pounds. That's not true. These guys all cut down from a different weight. There's a few guys who like to stay close to their weight division, but for the most part, 95% of these boxers they cut down from another weight. And let me just go into this first of all. Gennady Golovkin, he comes into the ring at 170 pounds. So he he fights at middleweight, which is 160, but he comes into the ring at 170 pounds, right? Did you guys know that Kell Brook, he comes into the ring at 170 pounds as well? As a welterweight, he comes into the ring around, between 168 and 170. That's from Eddie Hearn's mouth, okay? So, and it's weird because we haven't been able to get an in-ring weight on Kell Brook in recent years, if ever. I'm not even sure, but from all the fights that I remember watching of Kell Brook, they never show his in-ring weight. But everybody knows that he's massive. He's the biggest welterweight out there. Um, so basically, he's the same size as Gennady Golovkin right now, and that is, or not even right now, but you know, in his previous fights, he's already in the ring at Golovkin's size. So the size disparity, even if Kell Brook had not gained that weight, the size disparity is only going to be a couple pounds at most. It would have only been a couple pounds at most. And we all know that that process that these fighters go through when they dehydrate themselves before the weigh-in, it takes a lot out of you, especially the older you are. Kell Brook's no spring chicken. He's 30 years old now, I believe. And just like when people tell you about your hangovers getting worse after 25, it's the same shit for when these guys cut weight. It's not as easy anymore once you reach a certain age. And that's only for dehydrating yourself, okay? That's, like I said, that happens in the last basically in the last 3 days, okay? Last 2 weeks if you're gonna count cutting out your carbs, but and fighters always do better when they have to cut less weight, especially when they're older guys, above 28 years old. A good example to look at is Terrence Crawford. When he was at 135 fighting Ray Beltran, he came into the ring at 155 pounds, right? So he weighed in at 135, came into the ring at 155. That's a 20-pound deficit. So he had to basically not eat and not drink and work out until he sweat out 20 pounds. Sweat, shit, piss, all that combined. And that takes a lot out of you. And then when he moved up to 140 and fought Thomas Delorme, he came into the ring, same weight, 155 pounds, but he weighed in at 140. That's only a 15-pound deficit. And that might not sound crazy, but it's almost as if there's diminishing returns when you're dehydrating yourself like that. The first couple pounds might be easy to lose, but the last couple, depending on how many you have to lose in total, it might be, might put you through hell. And that's why a lot of people don't understand, like when they see these guys step on the scale and, you know, they're a half pound overweight, they look like they're, you know, completely emaciated, like they're about to pass out on the scale, which, you know, people pass out before the weigh-ins all the time. That should let you know how hard it is to go through that process. But when I say diminishing returns, what I mean is that just because, you know, anyone right now can go out and jog for, you know, some amount of time and lose 2 pounds of sweat, it doesn't mean that once you've already lost 18 pounds and you got 2 more to go, that those 2 are going to be easy. They're going to come off much slower. And like I said, you haven't eaten in, you know, 2 to 3 days. You probably haven't drank water in 2 days. Or, you know, if you have very little, you're fucking taking in caffeine and drinking green tea and all that shit, because that's a natural diuretic. And it puts your body through hell, right? So anyone who is starting to cut less weight when they're at that point, they're going to turn out better. Like I said, look at Terrence Crawford. He knocked Delorme out, and after the fight, he straight up said it. He said, I feel better. I was killing myself going to 135. And, you know, he just felt stronger, period. And that's only the cutting weight, all right? Now we're going to get into something that, you know, most people in the know, this is what they're worried about. They're worried about the fact that Kell Brook is, you know, was 176 pounds, you know, what was it, 20-something days ago, right? And what people think is that Kell Brook is actually, you know, overeating, trying to put on weight. Because, you know, your genetics controls mostly everything. And when you are eating, you know, the right amount of calories, you know, sufficient amount of calories to, you know, sustain your muscle mass and, you know, give you energy and all that shit. If you're eating that amount and you're working out, you're doing your, you know, a hard workout regimen, wherever you are there, that's where you're genetically predisposed to be, right? And basically, in order to gain weight from that point, there's only one thing you could do, and that's eat more. You know, and I'm talking about clean weight here. I'm not talking about becoming a fat ass. If you want to gain clean weight from your genetically predisposed weight, when you're in tip-top shape, right? In order to gain weight, you know, weight correctly, the only thing you could do is lift and eat, right? And once again, shying away from your genetics is extremely hard. You're not going to put on that weight quickly. It's going to take a very, very long time, you know, depending on your genetics as well. But no one can go out there and just gain 10 pounds of muscle, like, you know, unless they're on steroids. No one is going to go do that. The only way to lose weight from that point is to cut your calories, right? To eat less. You want to gain weight, eat more. You want to lose weight, eat less. And what happens there is that if you start losing weight from your genetically, you know, predisposed spot, that's going to take something out of you as well, okay? On all levels. It can affect your speed, your stamina, your strength, your punch resistance, literally everything. I've done it myself, and it does not, to me, I didn't like it, okay? And the fact that Kell Brook had to do that in the first place, like I said, he comes in between 168, 170. That's not where his body wants to be. That's not where his genetics put him. I can guarantee you that. And how do I know that? Because if you guys watch an interview with Eddie Hearn, after the first Golovkin press conference, Eddie Hearn was talking about how massive Kell Brook is and blah, blah, blah. Everybody already knows that. But he was basically saying that Kell Brook comes into the ring at 168, 170 anyway, regardless. Whether he's at welterweight, you know. Not only that, but he has to starve himself just to stay at that 168, 170. So it's not like he's in tip-top shape, eating enough calories, sustaining his muscle, and then he has to cut, just dehydrate himself from 168. And this is something you could see because look at how much weight he gains in between fights. He goes into his training camp and he has to starve himself to get down to 168. And then on top of that, he has to dehydrate himself that 23 pounds, that 21 to 23 pounds, which is, it's crazy. Like I said, there's no way we've been seeing 100% of Kell Brook. No way possible, all right? So, after saying that, just think about it. How do you think that he gained all this weight and got to 176 pounds? Because a lot of people, mainly 7/8 Sports TV, is saying that, the weight that he put on is not going to be effective. It's going to make him slow. It's going to make him sluggish. But see, I disagree. I think that what's happening here is, since he's not fighting at welterweight, he's able to eat the right amount of food. And it's not that he's gaining muscle, like he's lifting all this weight and he's putting on all this, all this mass that's unnatural to his body. I think that this is literally natural to him, okay? Like I was talking about the genetics, man. If you guys, I can tell you for a fact that your body will gain muscle back, if you're genetically supposed to be there, much faster than it will when you're lifting weights. Much faster. If you're trying to fucking gain extra weight on top of that, it's going to be difficult. But if you lose weight, if you're starving yourself, the second you go back to eating how much you're supposed to be eating, you're going to gain that muscle back and you're going to gain that weight back, and it's going to feel natural. I don't think that Kell Brook is in a position where, he's overeating and doing all that shit. No, I don't think so, man. I think we're going to see the best Kell Brook that we've ever seen in that ring. Not only is he not going to be cutting that 21 pounds, he's going to basically cut that in half, the amount that he has to cut, but once again, he's going to be able to eat as many carbs as his body needs. He's going to be able to eat as much protein as his body needs. I think Kell Brook's going to be healthy in there, man, and I think that